To their shock, the Empire finds humans, flourishing in a forgotten civilization. Part 5. The silence after Emperor Sung-hoon's surrender was deafening. For the first time in 3,000 years of imperial history, the Empire had admitted defeat. Not because they lacked weapons or strength, but because they had lost the moral authority to continue fighting. Medical Chief Isul stood in the emergency command center on New Haven and looked at the casualty reports scrolling across her screen. 2,000 ships destroyed, 15 million dead, 30 million wounded. Both human and Valorian casualties mixed together in the numbers. Pain knew no species. Begin the largest medical operation in our history, Isul commanded. I want every hospital, every medical ship, every trained doctor working around the clock. We treat everyone. Human, Valorian, every species. No one waits for care based on which side they fought for. Medical vessels that had been pulling back from the fighting now surged forward. They moved among the debris field, searching for survivors. Human doctors worked alongside Imperial medics who had defected during the battle. Together, they pulled wounded from shattered ships and rushed them to facilities where the difference between attacker and defender ceased to matter. On the flagship where Admiral Yuna had been arrested, Captain Taman helped coordinate the rescue efforts. His ship had survived the antimatter blast barely. Half his crew was injured, but they worked through their pain, searching for others who needed help. Captain, we've found survivors on an Imperial destroyer, his communications officer reported. They're requesting permission to beam them to our medical bay. Granted, Taman said immediately. And see if we can spare medical supplies for their ship. Their doctors might be able to save more lives if we help them. This scene repeated across the system. Former enemies helped each other. Ships shared resources. Medical teams worked together without regard for the conflict that had just ended. The battle was over, but the work of healing had just begun. Emperor Sung-hoon watched the rescue operations from his flagship and felt something crack inside him. For 60 years he had ruled with absolute authority. He had believed the Empire's way was the only path to civilized order. He had justified conquest as necessary guidance for primitive species. But the humans had proven him wrong. They had shown restraint when they could have shown destruction. They had valued life when violence would have been easier. And now, even after suffering terrible losses, they were saving their attackers. He requested a meeting with the human leadership. Administrator Hedgen agreed immediately, despite the fresh grief of losing millions of her people. They met in a simple room on New Haven with no ceremony or formality. I'm sorry, Sung-hoon said simply. Those words felt strange in his mouth. Emperors didn't apologize, but he was no longer sure what being emperor meant. My empire killed your people. My system created someone like Yuna who thought mass murder was acceptable. I'm responsible. Hyejin sat across from him, her face showing exhaustion and sorrow. Yes, you are responsible. But responsibility means choosing what to do next, not just accepting blame for the past. I don't know what to do, Sung-hoon admitted. Everything I believed has been shown to be false. The Empire's philosophy, our justifications for conquest, our rigid hierarchy. You've proven there's a better way. But I don't know how to change a system that's existed for millennia. You start by asking for help, said elder statesman Hanul, joining the meeting. At over 3,000 years old, he had seen the birth of the Empire and now its potential transformation. You admit you don't have all the answers. You open yourself to learning from others. Council leader Yoonji entered as well, carrying data pads with information she'd prepared. We've been thinking about this moment for centuries. What happens if the Empire ever wants to change? We have ideas, but they only work if you genuinely want transformation, not just superficial reform. Over the next hours, they talked. Hyejin, Hanul, and Eunji explained the principles that had guided human civilization for 3,000 years. Democracy instead of autocracy. Cooperation instead of hierarchy. Education instead of indoctrination. Freedom instead of control. But how do I convince 10,000 worlds to abandon everything they've known? Sung-hoon asked. The Empire is vast. Most worlds have lived under imperial rule for generations. They know nothing else. You tell them the truth, Yoonji said. You show them there's another way. You give them a choice. Some will embrace change. Others will resist. But you must be willing to let them choose even if they choose something you don't agree with. That's chaos, Sung-hoon protested, his old instincts rising. That's freedom. Hanul corrected gently, and yes, it's messier than autocracy. It's slower and more complicated. But it's also more resilient. Systems based on choice adapt better than systems based on force. Sung-hoon spent 3 days in intensive discussions with human leaders. They showed him models for governmental transformation. They shared their mistakes and successes from 3,000 years of experimentation. They were honest about the challenges he would face. Finally, Sung-hoon made his decision. He recorded a message that would be broadcast to every world in the Empire. "People of the Valorian Empire," he began, "I am Emperor Sung-hoon and I have failed you. For 60 years I have ruled believing that our way was the only way. That conquest brought civilization. That hierarchy created order. That strength meant domination. I was wrong. Across 10,000 worlds, beings stopped what they were doing to listen. An emperor admitting error was unprecedented. I have seen a civilization that achieved greatness without conquest. Humans who built advanced technology through cooperation instead of subjugation. A society where every voice matters and freedom is valued above control. They prove that our empire's foundation is flawed. Therefore, I am dissolving the imperial authority structure. Each world will be given the choice to govern itself or to join a new federation based on mutual cooperation. I will no longer be your emperor. I will serve as a mediator and guide if you'll have me, but never again as an absolute ruler. This will be difficult. Some worlds will struggle, others will thrive. There will be conflict and chaos, but there will also be freedom and possibility. The humans have offered to help us through this transition, to share their knowledge and experience. I urge you to accept their guidance. We have a chance to become something better than we were, a chance to build a galaxy based on cooperation instead of conquest. I hope you'll join me in taking that chance." The message ended. Sung-hoon sat back, suddenly exhausted. He had just ended the empire that had existed for 3,000 years. He had no idea what would happen next. The response was immediate and chaotic. Some worlds celebrated, seeing freedom as long-awaited liberation. Others panicked, afraid of losing the order and stability they'd known. Hardline imperial worlds rejected the changes and declared independence, forming their own smaller empires based on the old model. Resistance movements formed. Former imperial officers who believed in the old ways started organizing. They called Sung-hoon a traitor and the humans corrupting influences. They promised to restore the empire to its former glory through force. But something unexpected happened too. Worlds started reaching out to each other, forming alliances and cooperative agreements. Species that had been conquered generations ago began reclaiming their cultures. Educational systems started teaching multiple perspectives instead of imperial propaganda. The transformation was messy, complicated, and sometimes violent. But it was also hopeful. Former Grand Inquisitor Doyen became one of the first ambassadors between the old empire and the new federation. He traveled to resistant worlds not with threats but with information. He showed them what he'd seen in the refuge. He spoke honestly about the challenges and opportunities of change. Captain Taemin took command of the first joint human-Valorian exploration vessel. His crew was a mix of species who had been enemies weeks before. They explored unknown space together, discovering new civilizations and offering them knowledge and cooperation instead of conquest. Philosopher Ji-young established academies across former Empire space. She taught human ethics alongside Valorian philosophy, alien spirituality, and countless other wisdom traditions. Students learned to think critically, to question assumptions, and to find truth through dialogue rather than authority. Chief Engineer Minho led technology exchange programs. He carefully shared human advances while helping other species develop their own innovations. He insisted that technology shared must be understood, not just copied, so each civilization could continue advancing independently. Administrator Hyejin coordinated the massive humanitarian effort required to help thousands of worlds transition to new governmental systems. The refuge provided food, medicine, and educational resources to struggling worlds. They asked nothing in return except a commitment to peaceful cooperation. To their shock, the Empire finds humans. Flourishing in a forgotten civilization, Part 4 Admiral Yuna stood on the bridge of her flagship and watched the human worlds through the viewscreen. 500 warships surrounded her command vessel, the largest assault force assembled in decades. She felt satisfaction mixed with contempt. These humans had corrupted the Emperor with their soft philosophy. Now she would show them the true power of imperial might. "All ships report ready, Admiral," her tactical officer announced. Begin the assault, Yuna commanded. Target their defense platforms first, then their orbital stations. I want complete orbital superiority within the hour. The fleet moved forward. Energy weapons charged. Missile systems came online. 500 ships prepared to unleash destruction on a scale that would turn human worlds into smoking ruins. On New Haven, Defense Coordinator Seojin watched the Empire fleet advance. He'd known this moment would come eventually. The humans had prepared for 3,000 years. They had hoped the Empire would choose peace, but they had planned for war. Activate primary defense grid, Seojin ordered calmly. Defensive measures only. No lethal force. We save lives, even theirs. Around the system, defense platforms that had been dormant for centuries came to life. But they didn't fire weapons. Instead, they generated massive gravity wells that appeared directly in the path of the advancing Imperial fleet. On Yuna's flagship, alarms screamed. Admiral, we're caught in a gravity field. Multiple fields. They're everywhere. The Imperial ship slowed as if moving through thick liquid. Their engines strained against invisible forces that shouldn't exist. Ships that tried to maneuver found themselves pulled off course, their controls useless against the artificial gravity. Impossible, Yuna snarled. No one has gravity manipulation technology this advanced. Fire anyway. Full spread. Hit everything. The Imperial fleet opened fire, but their targeting systems failed. The same gravity fields that trapped their ships bent the paths of energy weapons and missiles. Shots that should have hit human stations curved away harmlessly into space. Seojin activated the second defense layer. Nanite swarms launched from hidden platforms. Microscopic machines swarmed over Imperial ships, not destroying but disabling. Weapons systems shut down. Shields failed. Ships went dark as the nanites disrupted their power systems. On the bridge of one Imperial destroyer, Captain Taman watched his systems fail one by one. He'd been forced to join Yuna's fleet despite his objections. Now he saw the humans demonstrating exactly what Grand Inquisitor Doyen had warned about, technology far beyond Imperial capabilities. Captain, we're dead in space, his engineering officer reported. Weapons offline. Engines offline. Life support still functioning, but we're helpless. Taman looked at his crew. Young Valorians who had believed they were fighting to protect the Empire. Now they drifted in space at the mercy of an enemy they had tried to destroy. Admiral Yuna refused to accept defeat. All ships with functioning weapons target civilian areas. If we can't destroy their military, we'll force them to surrender by threatening their people. Across the fleet, the few ships still capable of firing redirected their weapons toward human cities. Missiles launched. Energy beams lanced out. Death rained down on populated areas. In the cities below, evacuation alarms sounded. Humans moved quickly but calmly toward shelters. They had drilled for this scenario for centuries. Children were carried to safety. The elderly were helped to protective facilities. No one panicked. They trusted their defenders. Human rescue ships launched immediately. Not warships, but medical vessels and evacuation craft. They moved between the Imperial weapons fire and the cities below, their shields absorbing hits meant for civilians. Ships exploded as they took multiple missile strikes. Thousands of humans died protecting cities that also housed Empire civilians who couldn't evacuate in time. On her flagship, Admiral Yuna watched human rescue ships die and felt nothing but contempt. Fools. They're sacrificing themselves for people who aren't even their own species. Their weakness will be their end. But across the Imperial fleet, something unexpected happened. Officers and crew members watched the humans die protecting everyone, even their enemies. They saw rescue ships continue their work even as they burned. They saw cities evacuating calmly, humans helping aliens reach safety without discrimination. On Taman's disabled destroyer, his weapons officer spoke quietly. Sir, those humans just saved 17 of our ships from collision. They repositioned us even while under fire. Taman nodded slowly. He'd been watching the same thing. The humans could have let disabled Imperial ships crash into each other or drift into planets. Instead, they used their gravity technology to move the helpless vessels to safe positions. They're still trying to save us, Taman said. Even while we're killing them. Similar conversations happened across the fleet. Soldiers who had expected to face a ruthless enemy instead encountered beings who valued all life, even the lives of those attacking them. The disconnect between what they'd been told and what they were seeing created doubt. On the destroyer Righteous Fire, Commander Bora made a decision. Cut all connections to the fleet command network. I will not participate in civilian massacre. Her crew stared at her in shock. Refusing orders meant execution for treason. But Bora pointed at the view screen where a human medical ship was pulling Imperial survivors from a destroyed escort vessel. They're saving our people while we kill theirs, Bora said. I won't be part of this anymore. Anyone who wants to leave my ship and report me can do so, but I'm done following orders that have no honor. No one moved to leave. Slowly, her weapons officer powered down their remaining guns. The ship went quiet, refusing to fight. The mutiny spread. One ship stopped firing, then another, then 10. Captains who had seen too much, who couldn't reconcile the propaganda with reality, made their choice. Within an hour, a third of Yuna's fleet had gone silent, refusing to participate in the attack. Yuna saw her fleet falling apart and knew she was losing. But she had one final weapon. Deep in her flagship's arsenal was a device the Empire rarely used. Antimatter warheads capable of sterilizing entire planets. Prepare antimatter weapons, Yuna ordered. Target all 7 human worlds. If I can't conquer them, I'll make sure they never threaten the Empire again. Her officers hesitated. Admiral, that will kill billions. The radiation will spread across the system. It will make these worlds uninhabitable for thousands of years. Do it, Yuna commanded. The humans chose this when they defied the Empire. The antimatter weapons armed. 6 missiles per world, 42 planet killers ready to launch. Yuna's hand moved toward the firing control. On New Haven, Seojin detected the antimatter signatures. His face went pale. They had defenses against conventional weapons, but antimatter was different. It was pure destruction. Nothing could stop it completely. All defense platforms, maximum effort, he ordered. Shoot down as many missiles as possible, but evacuate everyone you can. We're out of time. The missiles launched. 42 points of light streaking toward 7 worlds. Defense platforms fired desperately, destroying some missiles but not all. Gravity wells tried to redirect the warheads, but antimatter was too unstable to manipulate safely. Engineer Hajun, who had been silent during the battle, finally spoke. Defense coordinator, I can activate the Founder's defense. Seojin turned to him in shock. That system was never tested. We don't know if it even works. It works, Hajun said quietly. I've maintained it for 200 years. The satellites are ready, but once we activate them, there's no going back. The Empire will know we could have destroyed them at any time. Do it, Seojin said. We can't let billions die. Hajun entered a code that had been held secret for 3,000 years. Around the entire system, defense satellites came online, not the platforms they'd been using to disable ships. These were different, older, more powerful, and absolutely lethal. On every Imperial ship, sensors detected the new signatures. Weapons platforms capable of destroying entire fleets had surrounded them from the beginning. The humans could have wiped out the Empire forces before a single shot was fired, but they had chosen not to use these weapons, hoping for peace even while preparing for war. Hajun locked onto the antimatter missiles. Firing. Beams of pure energy lanced out from the satellites. 40 missiles were destroyed instantly, but 2 got through, both heading for New Haven. The largest human population center, 3 billion people. We can't stop them, Hajun said, his voice breaking. The blast will kill everyone. Administrator Hyejin was already moving. She activated the emergency channel that connected every ship in the system. All vessels, civilian and military, we need shields at coordinates now. Emergency evacuation of New Haven in progress. Thousands of ships responded. Human vessels that had been holding back from the fighting. Civilian craft. Even some of the Imperial ships that had mutinied. They moved into position over New Haven, layering their shields to create a barrier between the city and the incoming warheads. Captain Taman, his ship finally back online, joined the formation. Righteous fire with me. Everyone, maximum shields. We're going to stop those missiles. To their shock, the Empire finds humans. Flourishing in a forgotten civilization, Part 3 Emperor Sunghun had ruled the Valorian Empire for 60 years. He had presided over the conquest of 400 worlds. He had received the submission of countless species. He had built monuments to imperial power that would last millennia. And in all those years, nothing had surprised him, until he read Grand Inquisitor Doyen's report about the humans. Now, as his flagship entered System J447 with an escort of 200 vessels, Sunghun felt something unfamiliar stirring in his chest, curiosity mixed with irritation. These humans had hidden from the Empire for 3,000 years. They had built an advanced civilization in secret, and according to Doyen, they seemed to think their way was better than the imperial system. The emperor would see for himself. If they were frauds, he would expose them. If they had stolen technology, he would reclaim it. And if they truly had achieved greatness on their own, well, that would require careful consideration. His ship landed with full ceremony. Guards in gleaming armor formed ranks. Advisors and officials created a procession worthy of the Empire's supreme ruler. Sung-hoon expected the humans to be overwhelmed by the display. Instead, a single woman waited to greet him. She wore simple clothes and carried no weapons. Her expression was calm and welcoming. She bowed politely, but not with the deep subservience he usually received. "Emperor Sung-hoon," she said, "welcome to New Haven. I am Ji-young. I'll be your guide during your visit. We're honored by your presence. Just one guide?" Sung-hoon asked, slightly offended. "I brought 200 ships and 1,000 attendants. You send one person?" Ji-young smiled. "I thought you might prefer a personal tour rather than a spectacle. But if you'd like us to arrange something more formal, we certainly can. We have protocols for receiving foreign dignitaries." "Foreign?" Sung-hoon felt his irritation grow. "Humans are subjects of the Empire by ancient right. Your ancestors fled their obligations, but that doesn't change your status. With respect, Emperor, we've never been subjects of the current Empire," Ji-young said gently. "We left before your government fully formed. We've governed ourselves for 3,000 years. But we don't need to debate legal points on the landing platform. Please let me show you what we've built. Then we can discuss our relationship." Sung-hoon wanted to argue, but something about Ji-young's calm confidence intrigued him. She wasn't afraid of him. She wasn't trying to please him. She treated him like an honored guest, not a god. It was refreshing in a strange way. "Very well," he said. "Show me your civilization." Ji-young led him through New Haven. Sung-hoon had toured countless conquered worlds, and he knew what to look for. Signs of poverty hidden behind false fronts, military installations disguised as civilian buildings, populations pretending to be happy while rebellion simmered beneath the surface. He saw none of that here. The city was genuinely prosperous. People moved freely without fear or restraint. They greeted each other warmly. Children played in parks while adults worked in open-air markets and outdoor offices. Everything felt natural and unforced. "This is one of our democratic councils," Ji-young explained, leading him into a large building where hundreds of humans debated policy. "We rotate council membership every 2 years. Any citizen can serve. Decisions require majority approval." Sung-hoon watched the chaos of democratic debate with distaste. People argued passionately. They disagreed openly. Voices rose and fell. It seemed inefficient and messy compared to imperial decrees that came from the top and flowed downward. "How do you accomplish anything?" he asked. "This looks like disorder." "It takes longer," Ji-young admitted. "But the solutions we reach have broader support because everyone had a voice in creating them. People follow rules they helped make more readily than rules imposed from above." She took him to a hospital next. Sung-hoon had seen imperial medical facilities with advanced equipment and skilled doctors. But those facilities were reserved for high-ranking citizens. The lower classes made do with basic care. This human hospital treated everyone equally. A farmer received the same care as a government official. Species that the Empire considered primitive or unworthy worked alongside humans as doctors and patients. "You treat aliens here?" Sung-hoon asked, watching a non-human doctor treat a human patient. "Of course," Ji-young said. "We've welcomed refugees from across the galaxy for centuries. Anyone fleeing persecution or seeking a better life can find sanctuary here. We believe all conscious beings deserve dignity and care." Sung-hoon recognized some of the alien species. They were from Empire worlds. They should have been subjects, not free citizens of a human settlement. "You're harboring fugitives from imperial justice," he said coldly. "We're providing sanctuary to those fleeing injustice," Ji-young corrected gently. "There's a difference. Many of these beings came from worlds the Empire conquered. They didn't choose to be subjects. They chose to be free." At an educational facility, Sung-hoon watched children of multiple species learn together. The curriculum covered science, arts, philosophy, and history from dozens of cultural perspectives. No single viewpoint dominated. Students were encouraged to question, to challenge, to think independently. "You teach them to question authority?" Sung-hoon asked, watching a young human child debate historical interpretation with an AI teacher. "We teach them to think. Ji-young replied. To analyze information, form their own conclusions and defend their reasoning. Independent thought makes stronger minds. It also makes unstable societies, Sung-hoon countered. Order requires acceptance of proper hierarchy. Ji-young turned to look at him directly. Does it? Or does hierarchy require suppression of independent thought? Emperor, look around. Do you see instability here? Or do you see people working together by choice rather than by force? The question bothered Sung-hoon more than he wanted to admit. The empire maintained order through clear hierarchy. Everyone knew their place. The system worked because people accepted their roles. But here, without hierarchy, the humans had created a society that seemed just as stable, possibly more so. Over the next several days, Ji-young introduced Sung-hoon to people who challenged everything he believed about civilization. Defense Minister Woo-jin explained how human forces could have destroyed the Empire's scout ships at any time but chose not to, because they valued life over security. We saw your ships coming decades before Captain Taemin arrived, Woo-jin said. We could have eliminated them before they knew we existed. But that would have meant killing people whose only crime was doing their job. We don't kill unless absolutely necessary. That's weakness, Sung-hoon said. Is it? Woo-jin asked. We have weapons that could devastate your fleet. We choose not to use them. Is restraint weakness or is it strength? Is it weak to value life, even the lives of potential enemies? Sung-hoon met elder statesman Hanul, one of the original evacuees from Earth. At 3,247 years old, he was the living memory of humanity's choice to flee the Empire. They sat in a quiet garden, while Hanul shared his memories. He spoke of Earth before the Empire's expansion began. He described the debate among human leaders about what to do as Valorian ships moved through the galaxy, conquering species and absorbing them into a growing hierarchy. We saw two futures, Hanul said, his ancient eyes still sharp. In one, we stayed and eventually became part of the Empire. We would be subjects, our culture absorbed, our independence lost. In the other, we risked everything to stay free. We chose freedom. And you've been hiding ever since, Sung-hoon said. Not hiding, Hanul corrected. Building. We created something here that couldn't exist under Empire rule. A society where every voice matters. Where species cooperate as equals. Where advancement comes through innovation rather than conquest. We hope that someday the Empire might see this and choose to change. Change into what? Sung-hoon asked. Into something better, Hanul said simply. You've built an empire on conquest and hierarchy. You've brought order to chaos, it's true. But at what cost? How many species have lost their cultures? How many beings live in service to a system they never chose? How much potential has been wasted because rigid hierarchy prevents the best ideas from rising? The questions haunted Sung-hoon as his visit continued. He met artists who created beauty without needing to glorify the state. Scientists who pursued knowledge for its own sake rather than military applications. Philosophers who debated freely without fear of offending authority. On his final evening, Ji-young took him to an observation deck overlooking New Haven. The city glowed with soft lights. Somewhere in the distance, music played. People walked through parks and streets enjoying their evening. What do you think? Ji-young asked quietly. Sung-hoon struggled to answer. Everything he'd seen challenged the foundations of imperial philosophy. The Empire taught that order came from hierarchy, that some must rule while others serve, that conquest brought civilization to primitive species. But the humans proved these ideas were not universal truths. They had built a different kind of order, one based on choice rather than compulsion. I think, Sung-hoon finally said, that you've created something that threatens everything the Empire stands for. To their shock, the Empire finds humans. Flourishing in a Forgotten Civilization, Part 2 Grand Inquisitor. Doyen read Captain Taemin's report for the 5th time and still couldn't believe it. Humans. Alive. Advanced. Thriving in a system that should have been dead. The High Command had been in chaos for 3 days since the report arrived. Half the council thought it was a hoax. The other half thought Taemin had been drugged or manipulated. Doyen believed the report was real, which made the situation far more dangerous. If humans had truly achieved advanced civilization without imperial guidance, it challenged the very foundation of Valorian philosophy. The Empire existed to bring order to chaos, to guide primitive species toward enlightenment. But you couldn't guide a species that had already surpassed you. That's why they sent Doyen. He was known for his skepticism and his ability to see through deception. He'd exposed frauds on a dozen worlds. If this human civilization was built on stolen technology or hidden empire support, he would find the truth. His fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of System J447. Doyen had brought 50 warships, enough to intimidate any potential threat. The show of force was deliberate. Let these humans see imperial power and understand their place in the natural order. "Sir, we're being hailed," his communications officer reported. "They're asking us to reduce our fleet formation to avoid looking aggressive." Doyen almost laughed. "Ignore that. Maintain battle formation. Let's see how confident they really are." A new message came through, this time text only. "Grand Inquisitor Doyen, welcome to the refuge. I am Chief Engineer Minho. I understand you wish to investigate our society. We're happy to show you everything. Would you prefer an armed escort to make you feel safer? Or will you accept our hospitality?" The message was polite, but carried an edge of amusement that irritated Doyen. These humans treated imperial power like a minor inconvenience rather than an existential threat. He decided to call their bluff. "I'm coming down with a full security detail," Doyen transmitted back. "We'll conduct inspections of your facilities, technology centers, and government buildings. You will cooperate fully." "Of course," came the reply. "Landing coordinates transmitted. I'll meet you personally." Doyen's shuttle landed in the same plaza where Captain Taman had first met the humans. Chief Engineer Minho waited with the same casual confidence that Administrator Hyejin had displayed. He was a middle-aged human with gray streaks in his hair and an easy smile that Doyen immediately distrusted. "Grand Inquisitor," Minho said, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming all this way. I've prepared a comprehensive tour. You'll have access to everything you want to see. No restrictions, no hidden areas. We have nothing to hide." "We'll see about that," Doyen replied coldly, ignoring the offered handshake. "Take me to your technology centers first. I want to see these supposedly advanced systems." Minho's smile didn't fade. "Right this way." The technology center was unlike anything Doyen had seen in 30 years of Imperial service. Clean rooms housed equipment that combined familiar principles with completely foreign applications. Humans worked alongside artificial intelligences that seemed genuinely conscious rather than simply programmed. "This is our primary AI research facility," Minho explained. "We achieved true artificial consciousness about 800 years ago. These beings choose to work with us. They're not slaves or tools. They're partners." Doyen watched a human engineer discuss complex calculations with an AI that displayed actual curiosity and creativity. "Impossible," he muttered. "AI cannot achieve true consciousness. It's a simulation." One of the AI units turned toward him. Its voice carried actual emotion. "I assure you, Inquisitor, I am quite real. Would you like me to prove it? I can discuss philosophy, create original art, or debate the nature of consciousness itself. Which would you prefer?" Doyen felt unsettled. He'd dealt with sophisticated AI before, but this was different. This machine seemed genuinely aware of itself. He pushed the discomfort aside and moved on. Minho took him to a fusion reactor that powered half the continent. It was smaller than Imperial reactors but produced 3 times the energy output. The safety systems were so advanced that humans worked in the same building with minimal shielding. "How did you develop this?" Doyen demanded. "This technology exceeds Imperial standards." "Where did you steal it from?" "We didn't steal it," Minho said patiently. "We developed it over centuries of research. You see, when you're not spending resources on conquest and subjugation, you can invest heavily in science and engineering. Progress comes faster when every mind is free to contribute." Next came the medical facilities. Doyen watched doctors treat patients with techniques that seemed like magic. Diseases that plagued the Empire were simply cured here. Injuries that would cripple a Valorian for life were healed in days. The humans had extended their lifespans to over 3 centuries while maintaining quality of life. "We've eliminated cancer, genetic disorders, and most infectious diseases," explained Dr. Isul, a woman who looked 30 but claimed to be 215 years old. "We've also solved aging to a large degree. People here live as long as they want, healthy and active until the end." Doyen felt a growing sense of unease. Every facility he visited, every system he inspected showed the same pattern. The humans hadn't stolen anything. They had genuinely developed technology that matched or exceeded Imperial standards through their own research and innovation. But the real shock came when Minho took him to meet ordinary citizens. Farmer Jiwan managed automated agricultural systems that fed 3 billion people with zero waste. She controlled vast networks of machines using neural interfaces that responded to thought alone. We don't have hunger here, Jiwan explained. Everyone eats well. We produce enough food for our population and usually have surplus for trade or emergencies. Teacher Soman showed him educational facilities where children learned at their own pace, guided by AI tutors customized to each student's needs. Every child had access to the same quality of education, regardless of their family's status or wealth. We believe every mind deserves the chance to reach its potential, Soman said. No one is held back because of where they were born or who their parents are. Soldier Kiwan demonstrated personal defense technology that could stop weapons fire the Empire considered unstoppable. His shield generator was small enough to wear on a belt, but powerful enough to deflect ship-grade energy weapons. We prefer not to fight, Kiwan said, but we're not defenseless. Every citizen can protect themselves and others if necessary. We train in defense, not conquest. After 3 days of inspections, Doyen felt exhausted and confused. Everything he'd been taught about civilization seemed wrong. The Empire maintained that strong central authority was necessary for progress. That hierarchy created efficiency, that some species needed to be guided for their own good. But here was proof of the opposite. The humans had no emperor, no rigid class system, no conquered subjects. They governed through democratic councils. They made decisions collectively. And somehow they had built something more advanced than the Empire in many ways. On his 4th day, Minho took Doyen to a building called the Archive. Inside, he met historian Nari, an elderly woman whose eyes sparkled with knowledge accumulated over 2.5 centuries. You want to know the truth? Nari said. It wasn't a question. You want to know how we really did this? Yes, Doyen admitted. I've seen your technology. I've met your people. I still don't understand how this is possible without Imperial Foundation. Nari led him to a vault deep in the archive. Inside were records dating back 3,000 years, the original evacuation plans, the decision to fake Earth's destruction, the careful construction of false data that kept the Empire looking elsewhere. Our ancestors knew what the Empire would become, Nari explained. They'd watched the early expansion, the subjugation of other species, the creation of a vast hierarchy built on conquest. They made a choice. They could stay and be absorbed into the Empire, losing their independence and values, or they could leave and build something different. She showed him recordings from the evacuation, millions of humans boarding generation ships, leaving behind everything they knew. The journey to this system. The first settlements on barren worlds. The slow, difficult process of building a new civilization from scratch. We had nothing when we arrived, Nari continued. No infrastructure. No established technology base. Just our knowledge, our determination, and our freedom. We built all of this through hard work, cooperation, and a commitment to values the Empire abandoned long ago. But you've been watching us, Doyen said. Captain Taman said you know about the Empire. How? Nari smiled. We've had observation posts in Empire space for over 2,000 years. Small stations, automated sensors. We've been tracking your expansion, your technology development, your political evolution. We wanted to know if you would ever change, if you would ever choose a better path. She pulled up files on a display, classified Imperial documents, military strategies, political debates, information that should have been impossible for outsiders to obtain. How did you get these? Doyen demanded. We're very good at staying hidden, Nari said, and we're very good at listening. We've never interfered, never revealed ourselves. We just... To their shock, the Empire finds humans flourishing in a forgotten civilization. Part 1, Captain Taman stared at his scanner display and wondered if the equipment had finally broken. For 3 weeks, his scout ship had been mapping dead systems along the outer rim of Valorian space. Every world so far had been exactly what the ancient records promised. Lifeless rocks orbiting dying stars. But System J447 was different. Very different. Run the scan again, Taman ordered his second officer. The young Valorian nodded and reset the instruments. The results came back identical. 7 planets showed active energy signatures, massive ones, the kind that only came from advanced civilization. Sir, this doesn't make sense, his navigator said, pointing at the data. The archives say this system was destroyed 3,000 years ago. A supernova was supposed to have sterilized everything within 10 light years. Taman studied the ancient records on his secondary screen. The report was clear and had been filed by a Valorian exploration team millennia ago. They had marked the system as a total loss and moved on. No one had bothered to check since. Why would they? Dead systems stayed dead. Take us in closer, Taman commanded. Full sensor sweep. I want to know what we're looking at before we report this. The scout ship moved deeper into the system. As they approached the fourth planet, the sensors started picking up more details. Cities. Thousands of them. Orbital stations, satellites, ships moving between the planets, and something else that made Taman's blood run cold. Captain, his science officer whispered. I'm detecting human life signs. The bridge went silent. Everyone knew about humans. They were taught about them in basic history classes. Earth had been destroyed in the Great Purge, a war so ancient that most details had been lost to time. The humans had fought against the early Valorian Empire and lost. Their world had burned. The species had gone extinct. Every schoolchild in the Empire knew this fact. That's impossible, Taman said, but his voice lacked conviction. The sensors didn't lie. Down on that planet, millions of beings with human genetic markers were going about their lives. Sir, we're being hailed, the communications officer announced. Audio and video. They're using standard Valorian protocols. On screen, Taman ordered, straightening in his chair. The view screen flickered to life. A woman appeared, human in every detail. She had dark hair pulled back in a simple style, and wore clothes that looked both practical and elegant. Her expression was calm, almost amused. Welcome to the refuge, she said in perfect Valorian. I am Administrator Heejin. We've been expecting you, though perhaps not quite this soon. Captain Taman, would you like to come down and talk in person? I promise you'll find it quite interesting. Taman felt his mouth go dry. She knew his name. She spoke his language flawlessly, and she wasn't surprised to see them at all. How do you know who I am? He asked. Heejin smiled. We know quite a bit about the Valorian Empire, Captain. We've been watching you for a very long time. Please come down to New Haven. Coordinates are being transmitted to your ship now. Bring whoever you wish. You'll be perfectly safe. The transmission ended before Taman could respond. His crew looked at him with confused expressions. He didn't blame them. Nothing about this situation made sense, but curiosity won out over caution. Prepare a shuttle, he said. I'm taking a team down. If we're not back in 6 hours, jump to the nearest Imperial station and report everything. The shuttle descent gave Taman time to think. Through the viewport, he watched the planet grow larger. It looked beautiful. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds, just like Earth in the old pictures from the archives. As they broke through the atmosphere, he saw cities that gleamed in the sunlight. Towers of glass and metal rose toward the sky. Roads connected vast urban centers. Everything looked clean, organized, and impossibly advanced. They landed in a plaza surrounded by gardens. Administrator Heejin waited for them with a small group of humans. No weapons, no guards, just people who looked genuinely happy to see them. Welcome to New Haven, Heejin said, shaking Taman's hand in an old Earth custom he'd only read about. I imagine you have many questions. Walk with me and I'll try to answer them. She led them through the city. Taman couldn't stop staring. Everything was wrong in the best possible way. The buildings used architectural techniques he didn't recognize. The streets were filled with people who looked healthy and content. Vehicles moved silently overhead, using some kind of anti-gravity technology that seemed more efficient than anything the Empire produced. How is this possible? Taman finally asked. Humans are supposed to be extinct. Earth was destroyed. Earth was destroyed, Heejin confirmed. But humanity was not. 3,000 years ago, our ancestors saw what the early empire was becoming. They saw the conquest, the subjugation of other species, the endless expansion. A group of visionaries decided to leave. They faked Earth's destruction, planted false records, and evacuated everyone they could to this system. This system was supposed to be dead, Taman said. We made it look that way, Heejin replied. We manipulated sensor readings from long range. We created false stellar data. We made sure anyone who glanced at this region would see exactly what we wanted them to see. Nothing worth investigating. And for 3,000 years it worked. We've been here the whole time, building our own civilization without the Empire's knowledge. They entered a massive building that Heejin called a community center. Inside, Taman saw people of all ages engaged in various activities. Children learned in open classrooms. Adults worked on projects that looked both artistic and scientific. Elderly humans moved with the energy of young people, their bodies clearly benefiting from advanced medical care. Your technology, Taman said. It's more advanced than ours in many ways. How did you achieve this without the Empire's guidance? Hijin stopped walking and turned to face him directly. Captain, that question reveals a fundamental assumption. You believe the Empire's way is the only way to advance. We proved that wrong. We built everything you see here from scratch. No conquered species to exploit. No forced labor. No hierarchies that crush innovation. We did it through cooperation, education, and freedom. Turns out humans can accomplish quite a lot when they're not being oppressed. Taman felt his worldview cracking. Everything he'd been taught suddenly felt questionable. The Empire prided itself on bringing order and advancement to primitive species, but here was proof that species could advance on their own, possibly even further than under imperial rule. Why reveal yourselves now? He asked. We didn't plan to, Hijin said, but your scanning technology improved faster than we anticipated. We knew someone would eventually see through our deception. We decided it might as well be now. Besides, we've been watching the Empire evolve. We think maybe it's time to open a dialogue. The High Command will want to know everything, Taman warned. They'll send investigators. Maybe even fleets. We know, Hijin said calmly. We're prepared for that. We've been preparing for 3,000 years. Send your report, Captain. Tell them what you found. Tell them humanity lives, thrives, and built something beautiful without their help. Let's see what they do with that information. Taman returned to his ship hours later, his mind reeling from everything he'd seen. Advanced AI that served humans willingly, medical technology that eliminated disease, energy systems that powered entire continents without pollution, and most shocking of all, a society that seemed genuinely happy. He sat in his captain's chair and began composing his report. He knew what would happen. The High Command would never accept this. They would send someone to investigate, probably someone high-ranking and difficult to impress. They would try to find fault, to prove that human achievement was somehow false or stolen. But Taman had walked their streets. He'd seen their faces. He'd felt their confidence. These humans had built something the Empire might never understand, a civilization based on choice rather than force. His finger hovered over the transmit button. Once he sent this report, everything would change. The Empire would learn that humanity not only survived, but flourished in ways that challenged everything the Empire stood for. Taman pressed the button. The message shot through subspace toward Imperial headquarters. In 72 hours, the High Command would know. And then the real test would begin.